Welcome. It's another episode of Illiterate. My name is Evan.
My name is Taylor. I read a book.
I watched a TV show. This week we're doing Nancy Drew.
I didn't read all the books. There's a billion.
Don't lie to us. We know you read every single one of them.
That's all I did this week.
You didn't read every single? You didn't read every single book?
Put me down, please. No, I read the first one, the OG, The Secret of the Old Clock.
Oh, that classic.
And you watched some of the TV show that just came out on the CW?
I did. I watched the pilot episode. It's on the CW.
And I was interested in Nancy Drew because we'd seen the posters on the buses and everything, and it doesn't seem like the show is of the best. I mean, it's CW. It's not HBO. It's not Netflix. But
right.
The Nancy Drew series as a whole is very highly regarded and commercially successful, although it is definitely directed more towards young girls.
100%.
So I was not as keyed into it as a child.
I remember reading a couple. There was a moment in probably like third, fourth, fifth grade. I was kind of into that, and the Hardy Boys.
Well, yeah.
I was into the old-timiness of it, kind of the antiquated thing of it, the mystery, kids in the 60s or 50s even, or whenever. That was just what my imagination. I've forgotten almost all of it. But the show is set high school. It's a year post-high school. Her mom passed away from cancer suddenly.
Her mom passes away from an illness in the book series.
Oh, my God, really?
Yeah.
Fantastic. I can't...
Yeah, in some books, she's 3 years old. In other books, she's 10, I think.
So her mom died very young in the books?
Yeah.
So oh, wow, okay.
And she just has her dad, who's a lawyer, yeah.
This seemed like the mom died rather suddenly towards the end of her high school, and then she missed all of her college applications, and so now she's in that kind of interim working in a restaurant, and that's where the whole series centers around, is her and the people working at the restaurant, and whether or not the love interest that she's with is a murderer.
No, well, there you go.
Casual.
And there's a supernatural element.
Yes, there's like a girl that was murdered 20 years ago that has been kind of the thing of high school legend and kid jokes around Halloween Town in the town.
Yeah. And we'll see, because in the book series, it's kind of like Scooby-Doo, where it's like there is spooky kind of stuff, but it's always discovered that it's Farmer John, or it was some sort of, it's not actually a ghost.
Right.
And I feel like they did that with the Scooby-Doo stuff in the movies, where they're like, oh yeah, it's actually demons, or it's actually this.
I definitely do think the supernatural version of the element of this is straight up supernatural. It's strange, and there's a voiceover through the whole thing, so you kind of get that tone of like reading a book almost.
Right. Yeah, so they definitely take in elements. If you know Nancy Drew, you'll know, like, oh, she has this boyfriend on again, off again. But they have changed a lot of the elements of Nancy Drew, as I was looking up about her, throughout time. And that's kind of what can be contentious in her history. Because
I went to see what other film, what other just adaptations were out there. And the moment I looked, it looked at there were just endless.
Yeah.
And so I stepped away immediately and said, well, this is one of those things where people are just taking shots at it. There's the source material that's kind of unmovable, and then anything post that adaptation-wise is, hey, what's your spin on it?
Yeah.
Give it a shot.
So by the end here, we'll promise that we'll get to why should you care? Why has she been so important? And why is she being made now? But to get to that, we have to start, what was the point of making her in the first place? So this was this guy, Edward Stratemeyer, who's the guy who came up with the Hardy Boys.
Genius.
This is the female counterpart to that. And he saw that girls were picking up the Hardy Boys, and he said, he was a bit misogynistic to begin with, but he saw money, and good on him for being like, well, girls need something to read from a girl.
I'll sell to them.
Yeah. So exactly, that's what he was all about. He's like one of the most prolific authors, publishers of all time, because he also did the Tom Swift series. That was his thing, was coming up with big series with hundreds of books coming out once a month.
How did he do all this?
How?
Yeah. So he gets like a concept, but then is he?
So he is the one.
Staffing writers.
He and his two daughters were coming up with the outlines, and then he would get ghost writers to write under a single name. So Carolyn Keene is the name for the Nancy Drew books, but it was 28 different people who wrote those books over time.
Hold on, wait. Carolyn King doesn't exist?
No, Carolyn Keene is a apparition, as are I don't have the author of the Hardy Boys, but Hardy Boys, Tom Swift,
Oh,
all
God.
the different ones that he had done, they just go under one name,
We
and
can't
it makes
air
it a lot.
this. Delete this. We can't uncover this. Delete this right now. We're gonna shatter people are gonna be riot in the streets. Like, the Hardy Boys, are you real? Nancy Drew's a lie. I love Carolyn King. I love Carolyn King.
Well, so who you actually love, because the first person was named, and this is a classic 1930s name, Mildred Benson.
Oh, Mildred, baby.
I think she wrote like the first 20 or so. She wrote a good majority of the first ones coming out. And she was this wild lady. She earned her degree in English from the University of Iowa in 25 and 3 years. She returned to the university and became the first student to earn a master's degree in journalism
You go, girl.
at the
Wow.
University of Iowa as a woman in the 1920s.
That's amazing.
She lived in Toledo, Ohio. This was her thing. She wrote under a dozen different names for all sorts of different publications.
So she wrote the first 20?
Or so, yeah.
Or so.
Yeah, yeah.
Or, sparsed in thereabouts?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
And
Do we know who wrote, like, specifically?
Which ones?
Yeah.
We do know now, yeah. But she was the one who really is credited with creating the character. Because like I said, this Edward Stratemeyer of the Stratemeyer
It's like,
Syndicate.
we got Hardy Boys. Boys, we gotta get a girl in here. Girl.
And she's got to do this and this and this. Yeah.
Get in there.
And this is the mystery that he puts out. And then she is credited because she did a lot of crazy stuff herself. She was an adventurer. She took numerous trips to Central America.
Then. She's the real Nancy Drew.
Yeah, she traversed the jungle in a Jeep. She canoed down rivers. She flew airplanes, witnessed archaeological sites. She was all about it. She was like Indiana Jones. So this is where Nancy Drew at the beginning, she's very, very headstrong and very, very, on her stuff, on her mission. And this is where people cite her as a early formative influence, where they're saying, oh yeah, she encouraged me to take unconventional roles, because this was bizarre for the 30s when it came out into the 50s to have this woman.
She sounds like Indiana Jones.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about because we don't think about it now, but it was like she owned her own car, which was a blue convertible, and had mechanical skills to fix it and drove around on her own. And it was unheard of that she would just like do that as a woman.
That's awesome.
And the love interest character, Ned, is not really a focal point ever in the original before they started doing all these crazy offshoots and everything.
So Ned is not in the.
No, he is, but it's like they're kind of a thing, but it's never like the focus is romance or what their relationship is, or are they going to break up? And they could be dating other people at times, but
he is the main love interest in the new show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this comes about later in her wild offshoots that they tried to change things up as the years went on.
Okay.
But in the original, she is not. And this Mildred Benson, her identity wasn't revealed until 1980.
Wow.
There was a court case involving the...
Was she still alive?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a court case involving the publishers because another writer was trying to claim credit in the Library of Congress for some of the Nancy Drew books that he wrote. And they were like, you cannot disclose based on your contract and this and that. And they won. But in order to provide testimony, because the daughter of Stratemeyer was saying that she wrote all of them, and they had proof, or they had to have the actual people, and so Mildred had to come forward and be like, yeah, I wrote these ones. And then it was revealed that she kind of did all the dirty work of getting the character to how Nancy Drew ended up being personified.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a good documentary.
Yeah, that happened in 1980, and it wasn't until 2001 she won the Edgar Allan Poe Award for mystery writing, and she was 96 years old.
God.
And then she died a year later.
Oh.
Yeah.
What a fairy tale, storybook ending.
And in an interview I saw, if you're interested in her favorite Nancy Drew, since there's over 100 of them, it's the second book, The Hidden Staircase, which that's the one that she says she liked writing the most and she thinks is the best one.
Okay.
So that's the one I'd go for. But like I said, there are 27 other people that were involved in making this thing. and some just as wild people as her. There was this guy, Charles Strong, who I found an article, which I'll link to in the show notes because it was absolutely bizarre when I saw it. The title of the article of this guy, and this is like the only thing I could find about him, it said, Long Island Man Kills Shark from Airplane.
Whoa, cool.
And he's just this
Not cool. It's an endangered species. I don't know how to feel about it. I wish it was me in a video game, but it's real life, and I'm conflicted.
Then the subtitle was Charles G. Strong, Adventurer, Uses Machine Gun in Thrilling New Sport. And he's just this insane dude who is all over the world, adventuring, doing millions of things. And he wrote one Nancy Drew book for some reason. The little byline for the article, which I just have to read to you, is Charles Strong has traced a lost colony of the old Norse civilization, taken part in a mapping expedition over northwestern Canada with the Royal Air Force, led a party across Finland from the northern end of the railway, and shot a shark with a machine gun from an airplane. He is an honorary police commissioner in Norway and a hero in Sweden. And he's from Long Island, and he wrote a Nancy Drew book.
He might be the most interesting man in the world, actually. Like, I've never thought that about anyone. But that's really fascinating.
Yeah. Read this article. It's bizarre. So many different people, that's the point of my rant here, contributed to her and who she is. But like I said, Ed Stratemeyer and his daughters ran the outlines, and then these people fleshed out the manuscripts, and then they ended up editing them.
Okay. And then when did that begin to change?
So in the 50s, Harriet, who is his daughter, started actually writing the manuscripts for most of them into the 80s. And in an interesting twist, tying back to one of our other episodes about Judy Garland, this Harriet lady died in 1982 while watching The Wizard of Oz. She had a heart attack.
Skipping down that yellow brick.
Yeah. So basically what happened was between 30 and 59, Nancy has graduated at 16 in the story because you were allowed to do that in high school.
Her father's mom graduated early.
Who did?
Her school, my mom, her school was set up strange where she was like, basically she just finished it all early. I don't know. You just did it. They just gave her the stuff and she just finished it early. I don't know. I'm glad we don't do that anymore, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. But, Nancy Drew did. And like I said, to me, she seems a lot like Mildred. And there was an editor who repeatedly asked Mildred to, in her words, make the sleuth less bold. Nancy said became Nancy said sweetly, she said kindly, and the like, all designed to produce a less abrasive, more caring type of character. Because it was not popular for this girl to take charge. And I found even interestingly also...
That was how they curbed it.
In the artwork, the first guy who did the artwork is named Russell Tandy. He did the first 26 or so volumes, and he did the original logo with her with the flashlight.
Okay.
And these covers often portray her with confident, assertive body language. She's not shocked or scared in any of them like you would imagine a lot of these,
No, she's
penny
like
novels.
in control. She's very commanding.
And she's shown either in the center of the action or actively but secretively investigating. She's often observed by a menacing figure, but she is in control of the situation.
She still looks like she knows what to expect next.
Yeah, and I'll post a link to an article that I found kind of analyzing the different covers and whatnot, which I thought was interesting. But I'll also post, because it's in 28 different languages, I think they adapted it to, 28 to, 40.
Wow.
Different languages. And there's changes in the covers and changes in the titles, and I found an interesting website where they compare, like you can click on Sweden and you can click on Italy and you can click on Portugal and Russia and see how they've changed
you the differences. Oh, wow.
The perception of her in different cultures as well, which I thought was wild.
What was the most striking difference? Or what was one that was interesting?
I mean, they don't make her look like the fashion of the places, and some of the titles are not as shocking. And some of them are way more colorful or abstract. Like you see those old, like, Polish or Russian movie posters, and it's like, that's not really what the artwork was.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool. I might check that out.
But this guy had a house fire in 1962 that destroyed all the originals and all the sketches and everything. So the dust jackets for the original Nancy Drew books are worth an awful lot. because that's the only artwork that exists out there of these is from the actual books that got published in that time frame.
That's a tragedy.
So, but over time, some people might argue that she becomes more in peril as the books progress and less in control of the situation.
Oh, really?
Or is less able to solve the mystery. And so, like you said, where does this take us? So this takes us from the 30s into the 50s and then into the 60s. And so in 59, they changed and revised. So like the book that I read is not the original Nancy Drew Secret of the Old Clock from the 30s. It's the one that got updated in 59. So they revised and changed a lot of stuff, including removing a lot of like racist or stereotypical stuff. They edited it, but this is controversial because they didn't just change the stereotypes, they basically just removed non-white characters. So instead of it having it be a black maid in the house, it's just a white maid.
Oh.
Very strange.
Very odd.
Yeah.
So that makes me feel away.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I don't like it.
Yeah, and I guess they were just trying to update, maybe change what Mildred had done with it, because this is a product of her time, but like I said, like they also changed her personality and tamed her down a little bit, made her more of the damsel in distress. She's more respectful and agreeable to male figures, and this goes on through the 60s and 70s and into the 80s.
That's odd. Seems that the longer it goes, the lesser of those striking initial qualities prevail. It's odd. It goes slipping the other way. It's like obvious to me that those are the defining characteristics of what, and so why would you lean out to create drama? I don't know.
Yeah, and then it's strange because now we're getting to in 1986 when they got sold. They had 3 different offshoots: the Nancy Drew Files, Super Mystery, where she combines with the Hardy Boys, and then Nancy Drew on Campus. And these are much more sexual. There's romantic.
I was about to say that sounds like a porno.
Yeah, and in the covers, she's wearing swimsuits. There's men in the background. Like it's like these,
When
Harlequin
was this?
romance. This is in the 80s.
Okay.
Yeah. And this only lasted for a decade. There was a mass cancellation of all of these offshoots in 97. And if you remember from the Joker episode that we just did where they said that you could call in to see if Robin would die, the on-campus portion of the Nancy Drew on-campus series, they had an 800 number, and you could call in and vote whether Ned should be her boyfriend or not.
Oh, really?
And they voted no.
Oh,
so they broke
lost.
up. Yeah.
I wonder how that fares for him in the new show.
Yeah.
He might be a murderer.
So this is where we get all the strange stuff with her, and they're trying all these different things, and like there's much more violent things. She's much less in control. She gets chloroformed and chokeholded, and like she can't deal with stuff like she could. She's a boss. Like in the book that I read, she's the one being like, I'm going to solve this. I'm going to figure this out. And it's also much less violent and gruesome. There's not really murder per se in a lot of these earlier ones. So then, like I said, that all got mass canceled. The actual series, the main series, ended in 2003, and they started Girl Detective, which is more modern, and then that got canceled.
Real creative.
Yeah. That got canceled in 2011. It was in first person. She was kind of a dunce, not really very able to solve crimes. And then they picked it up again in 2013 with the Nancy Drew Diaries. And this is much more tween. She's less perfect, doesn't really solve things, gets scared easily. It's very strange. I think they're trying to imbue her with more of a flawed personality, which is interesting to talk about, because it's like we're not used to that as a character trait, to be like, oh, this person is impenetrable, and she doesn't stop, and she doesn't give up, and she is a superhero ideal of what a young woman could be.
Right.
Not she gets scared. Like, she doesn't get scared, and that's why we like her.
That seems so strange. She's supposed to be, like Mildred, fixing her car or driving, I wonder what it is. I wonder what that shift is, and I wonder what happened behind the right. Whose idea was this, to push it in one direction like that? I don't know, because looking at it 2020 hindsight, it's just like those are the defining characteristics of what stands Nancy Drew apart, and why I think that young people attached to it is because they make you feel like there's a way out of wherever you are, however you feel about yourself. If you never, everything you never thought you could be, Nancy Drew showed you could do anything.
Yeah.
You know, this is a step in a direction of showing that there is a path out there that your life, especially as a young girl, doesn't have to be what some guy tells you it has to be.
Mm-hmm. And like, it gives you a vision for how you should be treated, not just what you should be doing.
How to take control, how to be respectful, and when to, but definitely how to. And I mean, so if you're not exemplifying characteristics and showing the moments in which somebody can implore the better parts of themselves or their best judgment and put some sort of, moral to the test, then what are you presenting?
It's hard to strike that duality, and I don't think we're comfortable with that anymore, or realizing like this is why she appeals to so many people in that time in your life when you're looking for that guidance.
Right. And I think it's young adult material. I mean, it's not like if you didn't read this as a child, then you're not going to pick it up now and go, well, this is the most riveting thing I've read this year.
Right.
You've got to put yourself back into the mindset of who it was meant for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was a quote that I found in an article that said, as I said, about the duality of it, it shows you that you can have dependence and independence without drawbacks. Like, she's still 18. She's still under her father's roof.
Right.
She can help disadvantaged people and be successful in society and not be downtrodden. She can be elitist and democratic. She can be a child and an adult. She can be a liberated woman and beholden to her family. Like you to have those balances and those contradictions.
That sounds more like a whole person to me. Is we have responsibilities to the people in our lives, and we're stuck in positions. I mean, between a rock and a hard place. Am I right? But that's it. But that is how you can start to make it more real. I mean, that's how people relate. Is when you see, oh yeah, I feel like this in this relationship, but with that relationship, I feel like this. Whatever that, as a young person trying to navigate all of this, and especially for when this stuff was written, these original books, I can only imagine the impact they must have had on every little girl that picked them up.
Yeah. So just some names. The U.S. Supreme Court Justices Sandra Day O'Connor, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Sonia Sotomayor, Oprah Winfrey and Barbara Walters, Barbara Streisand, actresses Ellen Barkin and Emma Roberts, Hillary Clinton, Laura Bush, the president of the National Organization for Women, Karen DeCrow. They all said that this character encouraged them to take on unconventional roles in their lives. And even now, in 2002, which was the latest that I could find this information, the first book, the one that I read, The Secret of the Old Clock, sold 150,000 copies, wow, which put it in the list of top 50 children's books.
Wow.
And I found that the whole series is the 9th best-selling book series of all time. Of course, Harry Potter beats it out. Goosebumps beats it out.
Big ones.
But Nancy Drew beats out,
Drew.
yeah. Nancy Drew beats out 50 Shades of Grey, Chronicles of Narnia, The Hunger Games, Game of Thrones, Winnie the Pooh, beats out Hardy Boys, and James Bond. So,
oh, man, no way. Beat James Bond. Look at that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize how huge she was and how much of an influence that energy in reading these things.
It's interesting. She's in the top 10, and the Hardy Boys aren't.
Yeah, they're down there in like
Look
the
at that.
20s.
Because it's in my mind, it's not really surprising that she's in the top 10, but I almost want to play, I want to be like, well, she's in the top 10, then Hardy Boys are right there.
Mm-mm.
But no.
No.
It's really interesting. That's an interesting. I wonder what the optics are between demographics, between boys and girls, and who read what. I mean, the divide should be clear, but I wonder what some numbers about that.
Well,
really
if you're
are.
listening to this and you're like, I read Nancy Drew, you guys are morons that don't know anything about this. I have 19 of these.
Show us what for.
Yeah, send us a message and be like, hey, y'all missed out. At illiterate pod on Instagram. But we want to know. I mean, I didn't even really read the Hardy Boys.
I read a couple. I can't remember anything from them. I read at least one of each.
So then here
But I
we
can't
come to the
remember.
interesting crossroads, which is, like you said, if this is so influential and so iconic to so many people, of the 6 feature films, 3 television shows, and 4 television pilots, why doesn't it work as a TV show? Or what is going to happen with this CW thing?
Yeah,
Any
there's
of
not
that?
like a definitive adaptation of this.
No television show featuring Nancy Drew has lasted longer than 2 years.
Is there? There's no piece of like, this is the one to watch. This one, of course, this one.
No.
There's not one. There's not one at all.
And it started out so soon. So in 1938,
Yeah, they've been doing this for
yeah,
the entire time.
everybody's been trying. As far as the films are concerned, in 1938, there were 4 B-movie films, completely the opposite of the books. She's ditzy, she's absent-minded, there's gruesome murders
Yeah, they got
they
it.
have to solve. Did not do well. And then there's the 2007 Nancy Drew with Emma Roberts, where it's kind of like fish out of water, time out of place. Like she's pretty old-fashioned, wearing plaid skirts, going from this rural town to live in Los Angeles.
How odd.
And solving mysteries, and it's like they pluck the Nancy Drew from the 50s and put her in modern times. There's a 2019 film that came out that Ellen DeGeneres produced, and it's got the gal who was
From It,
who was
right?
Bev in It. Yeah,
I'm working with her right now.
how about that?
Yeah.
Look at Evan,
Yeah. Look at me, just hitting her.
knowing all these people. But yeah, this is another one. That why did they do that and then have a TV show come out 8 months later? Who knows? But the 2019 one, she's like this hipster skateboarding girl in a small town. I'll put a trailer in the show notes, but it didn't seem like the Nancy Drew that we're talking about. And she's still in high school, not able to be on her
I didn't
own.
look into that one. It was direct to DVD.
Right.
So
And then as far as
and not in a good, not in a like you couldn't go in theaters kind of way, or like it's not a good kind of way.
And I was surprised because the TV shows make it even more bizarre. It's like that's like, okay, we get it. We're trying to adapt.
Yeah, I was
her to
actually
modern
shocked the
times.
first scene of this one.
The TV shows started out with a Hardy Boys Nancy Drew Mysteries from 77 to 79 on ABC. I'm
I'm in for it.
If you are to pick one that's most faithful,
Name a more iconic mashup.
if you really wanted one that's more to the spirit of the character and the tone and the smaller style mysteries, it would be this one. I'll post
Thank
a link.
God. Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
I'll post a
Okay,
link. It's so
great.
70s, but they put them
No,
up
that's
on YouTube.
great. That's perfect.
But I'll post a link to one.
It's got to be antiquated in some way.
Yeah.
Honestly, if I was gonna do it, I would put it in the time.
Yeah.
Just make it in the time. I don't know. Why are we trying to make her a skateboarding hipster? Why are we trying to give her a millennial, cancer-ridden mother?
Because when I'm reading the books, I'm reading it and she's saying yes, ma'am, and going to the department store and like doing 1950s things. She's
That's
like,
more. That's kind of more interesting to me.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
I want a character, and her being where she is. A writer decided that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that, and antiquated is good for this material.
Yeah.
I feel.
So that did not work, the 77 to 79 one, because they alternated between the Hardy Boys and her. And then in the second season, she was just a supporting person. And then in the third season, they just did the Hardy Boys. She wasn't even in it.
No.
And then they canceled the whole
Oh
series.
God.
So then in 1995, like you
Nancy's
said,
really dragging the whole show down.
better just do the Hardy Boys.
What if she was just horrible to work with?
That's why.
Was just,
No, she was lovely. She was lovely.
Next season.
No, so then in 1995, they tried to do, she was a 21-year-old criminology student in an upscale New York apartment. This was on the WB. What? They tried to again pair it with the Hardy Boys, but they got canceled halfway through the first season.
Good Lord.
Did not work. And then 2019 is this show, and who knows how successful that will be.
I mean, I gave it a shot. I have to say, out of all the CW shows, the look here has a little bit more of a film look. They have some shallow focus going on. At least in that element, I was pretty shocked to see. It looks a little more attained to, which I didn't expect. Now it dips in and out of television, but it seems like they are trying to put some real atmosphere on it. And I think for Halloween, for October, I think it's worth a shot. It's just the right dash of spooky. It's not, it's,
Yeah.
and it's got, and this was shocking, it has sex in it.
Well, it is interesting how we said that, like, maybe it's better, well, like we talked about with other stuff, it's okay to adapt it to the time and it can be integrated into what's going on now and fit a cultural
I want to see what it
milieu.
has to say.
Yeah.
I've seen the first episode and I've watched half of the second one. I'll finish it after we finish the show here. But I think yes, if you want to talk about something specific to now,
Now.
if this character can somehow tell me, show me, make me feel something about what's going on around us right now, awesome.
Being a woman in 2019.
Fantastic. There's a thousand ways you can go with this. They're definitely were trying to update it to make it fresh. So, but it's not making any kind of overture as to where it's heading with its overall theme. But I think the room is totally there. So
Yeah.
it would be a waste to not do that. And ultimately, it would feel really unfounded to not have some sort of take on all of the issues surrounding women right now.
Yeah.
Right now. And if anybody can say anything about it, maybe Nancy Drew can.
Does the character feel like I've described the ones in the books, being confident and assertive and in control
Yes.
and taken seriously and valued their opinions and all of that?
She seems like somebody who has pissed a lot of people off.
Right.
And her life has kind of skidded off the road. And she's dealing with the insecurity of she was somebody who had things under control. She's not anymore, but she still is that same person. Perhaps that is what it's ultimately trying to say, is that like you didn't change. Things happen and you get through it. What I'm waiting to see, but like ultimately, how do you deal with major grief, major struggle, and still feel like you're the same person? And ultimately, you're not, but maybe you are. Like, I think that is where it's headed with whatever it's got to say. I just don't know exactly what it is yet, but I think it could go far more specific into the women aspect of it. But I don't know. We'll see.
That brings us to kind of the premise that we set up at the beginning of the episode. What is the interesting part about Nancy Drew, and why does she capture so many hearts and minds, which maybe the show will or will not fulfill in defining her character, which is a bit of a paradox in of itself, is that she's interesting because she's neutral. Why is she so great? And in this article that I read, they were saying most of the Nancy Drew readers have two things in common. They have fond memories of the books and an amnesiac inability to remember anything about them. Not just because there's so many, but they're saying it was never Nancy's personality that shone, it was her skills. Readers in the 1950s would have seen her usefulness and her abilities as being subversive. And that was enough. And you could project yourself onto her. She was doing stuff. And maybe Nancy Drew is unrevivable, or rebooting her is like rebooting an element of your childhood that you were experiencing it in that moment. And maybe it's not that great, but it fits into the time in your life when it was great.
Maybe. And going back to another episode of ours, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, that is an example of an adaptation that went for a version meant for the exact same age group that the books were meant for. It does not try to be an R-rated film. It goes for an appropriate tone and does it well. So the clock is out on this. They're only 2 episodes into Nancy Drew. So,
do you think that people will be able to see her?
They go right out of the gate saying, "This ain't your mom's Nancy Drew," because she is hooking up with her boyfriend. Scene 1. And you kind of have to buckle up right away. You just okay, well, show me what you got and strap it on tight. The show is. It goes really hard, real quick to get you up to speed about this isn't what you think it quite is.
Right. Like the appeal of the old Nancy Drew is that she isn't the every woman. She's the archetype. You can't do everything that Nancy Drew can. Maybe you can't fix a car. Maybe you can't pilot a speedboat. Maybe you can't do this stuff, but you can imagine yourself in her sensibilities.
Maybe you could.
In this
That's
show.
what I mean. It just gives, all it has to do is give you the idea that maybe you could.
Yeah. Well,
that's good enough.
Yeah, I found, this is beautiful. In the 1932 book, Nancy's Mysterious Letter, at the very end, she says, "I have solved some mysteries, I'll admit, and I enjoy it. But I'm sure there are many other girls who could do the same.
There we go.
So that's the whole embodiment of Nancy Drew.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
This has been a blast. Thank you, Taylor.
Yeah, thank you.
Hit us up at illiterate pod on Insta. Let us know what you're watching. Let us know what you're reading. And let us know if we got Nancy Drew right. Let us
what are
know
your
what
thoughts?
for.
All right. We will see you all, hear you all next week.